The first edition of a JA Wednesday. Josh Neighbors here at the College Countdown. Jack Allen is with me. So the Wednesday edition of this show is going to be something that I am so looking forward to because Jack and I, both in Little Rock, both work in media, sports media, cover a lot of college sports, looking for a way to work together for a while. And lo and behold, it's the same kind of group of people that we know from Waco, Texas, that have helped us bring us together. So Jack, I mean, you know, it's August. We're about a month away, but like the amount of stuff that we actually have in this rundown, I had 5 things ready to go today. A couple of recruiting things. I have the should we abolish the coaches poll, which we're not even going to get to today. Like we're not going to get to that today. Yeah, I mean we've got a lot to talk about. We've got Redzone going to college football potentially. We've got postseason expansion. Are we done with that? And college sports at large, and also, hey, why does the in-stadium experience for games suck? Okay, that's what we're going to break down today. So, Jack, glad to have you, and I'm glad that we're finally able to work in a forum consistently. You know, we're not filling in on radio shows.
Yeah.
Or we can talk about some of the big picture stuff that really kind of stimulates our brains and stimulates the fans' brains.
Well, and get to talk about college sports at heart. I know both you and I, we love the pro game, but there's something special about college football, college basketball, for me, especially college baseball. I know we don't talk about that as much, but there's something special about the college game that I love getting the chance to talk about and to pick your brain, because you and I don't always agree on the way that this should all come out. And so I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So the first thing, let's just dive right into it. So college football red zone. There was a big piece of news today, and it's been talked about, and I'm a huge sports media fan at large. And there's been this conversation about, hey, the NFL and ESPN are essentially not a full merger, but, you know, they're kind of merging in some ways. ESPN's going to get NFL Network, the rights to distribute Redzone, NFL Fantasy, amongst other properties. In exchange, the NFL gets 10% equity in the country. Now, in ESPN, damn near country, in ESPN. But you know, it brings up some journalistic integrity questions. We're not going to hit on those today necessarily, but Roger Goodell had floated the idea of a college red zone. I'll give you my thought about this. They tried this a few years ago. Was it ESPN Goal Line, I believe was the name, right? So here's my thesis. I want to know what you think. NFL red zone works because like any given Sunday is actually a thing, right? Like you could have 8 one-score games in one window. You'd have 6 one-score games in one window. It doesn't always work out that way. College football, the talent is too far divided. You know, there is too much of a gap between the good teams and the bad teams for this to be a week-to-week compelling deal because you will have just crappy windows. Like there are windows where, you know, if 2:30 is big, ABC, CBS, and, you know, NBC, like they all might suck. And it happens with somewhat regularity just because there's a bigger talent gap. So I love the idea. It's a great idea. It could potentially bring fans closer to, hey, Conference USA game, you know, that's close to you in the red zone back and forth. But in principle, I don't know if the idea works. What do you think?
Well, that's my question is how deep are they willing to go in the weeds of college football? Because, you know, if we're just talking SEC, Big 10, Big 12, ACC, you may have those windows where there are not good games. And the reality is you can turn on your TV on a Saturday, especially weeks 1, 2, 3, and there's going to be times where there's not a close game on.
Right.
But, and this is my big thing, is if you're willing to put Sunbelt games on TV, if you're willing to put CUSA games on TV, if you're willing to get some action going during this red zone deal, there will be good games. Just quantity wise says there has to be close games. And the thing that I think it will offer is it exposes people to a different world of college football. They're not going to actively seek those games out, but if they're watching this college red zone and it just changes the channel to Troy Southern Miss on a Saturday, like maybe they'll find some interest in those teams and learn something about the sport that they never would have sought out on their own.
Yeah, I would say from that standpoint, like as the sport consolidates right now, this is a good idea, right? I mean, if you're talking about the health of the sport as a whole, kind of the same concept as like as the power conferences go stronger, it's important that we still have at-large bids for non-power like leagues, the non-power 4. So I like it from that standpoint because you're totally right. It would expose people to something that they have not seen before. and also coaches that might end up taking your team's, favorite team's job one day, which, is not a bad thing. But I think because the smaller conferences are a bit more balanced out in terms of, a team. I mean, the Big Ten, for example, like that is a top heavy league. That is purely a 4 or 5 team league that's really holding that thing up. The SEC is a bit more balanced, but yeah, the further down the line you go, the more balance I think that you see, unless you've got outlier programs that are spending a lot more money compared to the rest of the league.
Madison's out there.
Right, exactly. And so you get a few of those, but generally speaking, you get some more of it. I just wonder, like, if that's the calculus here, because that's what it boils down to. Like, there actually just aren't enough good games between massive brands every single week. Every NFL team is a huge brand. Every NFL team is a heavy hitter. Even for the teams where it's like the Chargers don't have a lot of fans, but like the franchise value tripled, or doubled when it went from St. Louis, or for the Rams at least, for the Chargers went to San Diego to LA, it got more value because guess what, of where it is. So like these massive brands the NFL has, they can put basically a series of compelling games together every single week. There's no guarantee for that for college. And you can have a season where like a lot of the games suck. Now, this year coming up might be a different story because we don't even know, the best team is. But I think generally speaking, would you agree your top level games are not going to be delivering on a week-to-week basis the way that the NFL does?
That's why I think you have to go quantity in this stage. Is that well, I mean, college baseball is a great example because during the postseason they did this. Like
totally.
They did this,
and it's awesome. And
it was incredible. I think it's better. I'm someone who will sit here and say that I think that college baseball's postseason is a more entertaining product than March Madness. I know I'm crazy. We can fight about that at some other date, but like, you can't get Octobucks during March Madness. You can during college baseball, and you could during college football. The problem and the difference, I think, right now with what questions that I have is, would ESPN only be able to use ESPN-owned properties?
Yes.
Which I would assume the answer is yes. I would assume you couldn't throw the big noon Saturday game on this,
right.
And how exactly would that work with their advertising partners and all that? Because
also they're about to go direct to consumer too.
Well, yeah, but it's because my thought is like more people are going to be watching this and not watching their regular linear game programming if this is offered. And so it's like there's just a lot of weird calculus to it that I don't have the answers to. But a part of that is you're going to lose conferences like the Big Ten.
Which you can't do. You can't functionally leave them, right?
You can't have this thing and not have the Big
Notre Dame on NBC.
You can't have this without having a lot of Big 12 games that are on Fox. Like,
and what if it's a split conference, right? For the Big 12, for example.
Exactly. How do you determine what's going to be on this thing?
Right.
I think that it's a great idea in theory, and if you had some sort of college football czar who could like organize it and all the powers that be, like maybe you could make it work. I just don't understand logistically how it would work, and if it's not going to be everything, then I don't know if it's really worth it.
Well, also like YouTube TV solved a bit of this, right? Where I mean, if we're just talking about like ESPN does own the SEC totally outright, so you've got that, but the way they spread out their windows, like you could just put the YouTube TV on and get the 4 boxes you want and get the desired effect. Also, big question of this is, like, I'll tell y'all what we'd watch maybe anyway, but Scott Hansen is a huge part of what Redzone is. Who is your Scott Hansen? I'm not saying there's not a bunch of viable candidates, but like Scott Hansen,
makes that show.
Like, I think, like, I'm not sure if he's into men or women or anything. I think he might just be like into football. Like, I think that guy is like, I like football is all I care about. And he is an Iron Man and he is so good. And it's really difficult to recreate that experience, man, because he is I really do believe this. There are guys that can give you something close. Like, I think, when they used to run through highlights on Sunday Night Football with Dan Patrick, guys like that, it's kind of the same thing, but the sustained ability of a Scott Hansen
to keep the internet going. Well, think about a college football Saturday. Like, are we doing this from 11 a.m.?
Yeah, to 11. And you know, like you do the double shift, where it's like the NCAA tournament, where it's like, all right, we're tagging out like the first group in the morning,
like they did with the Olympics with Gold Zone, like
Right. And I think, like, I mean, it depends on how serious you want to go. You know, I think like Chris Budden did a great job, as you mentioned, with the baseball one, but they have a table full of people. Do you go that angle? But there's just something about the Scott Hansen furious pace that he's able to maintain on his own. It's just like kind of that one voice, one direction that makes it, to me, so compelling. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about who their Scott Hansen could be. I mean, you could get a Reese Davis to do it, but Reese obviously is already invested.
Bigger obligations. That's
right,
the people that I would list out there already have big obligations. The other thing that I would think you would have to have is have someone who knows the whole sport and knows, like, because we're talking about the way to make this work is quantity.
Right.
Well, you have to have someone who knows and understands Troy football, who knows and understands,
like one of the cover three guys. Like you'd almost need, like, like a Chip Patterson, or it's, and like, does Chip or does Tom Fornelli want to sit around and do right? And
so that's kind of the issue that I have is, number one, logistically, how many games can we get, and how many games are they going to decide that people care about? And number two, who's going to do it that has that breadth of knowledge to be able to, on a whim, say, this is the situation, this is the guy playing quarterback, this is, there's so much. Like, I couldn't do it.
I think maybe the best way to attack this would to be do the YouTube TV Octabox model, but it would need to be just like there's nobody hosting. Like, I mean, that's because it's just such a long day. And, Jack, we always talk about this, like, where are the good games coming? I mean, they don't know ahead of time. They've got flex stuff ahead of time, but I mean, you don't know what window is gonna bring you that action, that oomph, that thing. And like the NFL, it's like the Saints have the Commanders on the ropes. What's happening? What's going on? It's like, oh my God, Ryan Fitzpatrick's thrown 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, and the first place team is down 3 scores. Well, they're all pros. It's a bit more even. Most likely, if you get 3, a couple big spreads, guess what? Like in college, they're probably going to end up playing out that way. And if they don't, quad box it. So I don't know. And I'd love to know the number that's put into Redzone. I'm sure they recoup that, but it's because Redzone's valuable and like it's got the stuff that college football doesn't have. So is it worth the investment too? I think it's another question. I just think Roger Goodell is saying, we've got the technology. We're with ESPN now. What about a college Redzone? But in reality, it doesn't really make sense.
Well, the one thing that I do think is, we've seen this play out in other sports. We've seen it in college baseball. We've seen it to an extent in March Madness. We saw it in the Olympics. I think that there's sort of this idea of, if we can make it work there, we can make it work here. We'll figure it out.
Right.
And maybe they do. Who knows? But I'm not optimistic about what the product is.
And it's not a knock on college football. It's just the nature of it being different.
Of it, and the sheer size.
And that's why, I mean, I hadn't even thought about it before, but like the YouTube TV quad box is actually like the right. That's the solution, which means we've already found it.
The only thing that I would say is if there's a way that you can incorporate ESPN Plus into that YouTube quad box to where, like, if I was wanting to watch non-Power 5, if I was wanting
UCA,
to watch,
Central Arkansas,
Central Arkansas playing football, like, let's throw that in a box. Like, if I had the ability to do that in combination, because like ESPN's app on the Xbox lets you quad box, but you can't pull in Big Noon. You can't pull. So there's got to be some way that we can figure out to make it interesting.
Yeah. All right. So are we done? Are we doing with? There we go. There's me with the error already. Are we done with expansion when it comes to college sports postseasons? So we got word this week, and this has been talked about a lot. The NCAA tournament is not going to go to 72, 76 teams. To me, that's a very, very good thing. And this kind of gets to the real heart of this conversation I want to have is there a critical mass, right? So in the FCS, we have a 2014 playoff. Is it 24? I think it is, right? 2014 playoff. But I think Tom Fornelli made this point one time. He said, look, like there's a difference between North Dakota State and Montana State clashing heads and, quite literally physically clashing heads. And then when Alabama and Clemson do it, like there is a more physical toll to be paid for the players that are involved. And I think it's far too many teams. And I think like the NCAA tournament, like you look at the bubble and you think about how many games they play 30 games. And I don't remember, Jack, when was the last time you heard somebody say, it was a really strong bubble this year? I mean, these 7-11 Big East teams are really something else, right?
It's been a while.
I can't remember a time where I heard about how strong the bubble was. And so to me, I'm glad they capped it. Look, the reason why you'd expand it, obviously, is because the NCAA tournament, you and I disagree, but like I think everybody can agree it's one of the top 3 postseasons that we have in all of sport, period, right? It's one of the best. And adding to that, I mean, we would watch. Like you put Belmont Murray State on TBS on a Tuesday, and I mean, we'd be like, what a crappy game. But you and I'd be like, yes, we're dialed in. So dialed into this. John Morant Jr. is playing for Murray State. I can't wait to watch. So there's that side of it, like where we will watch. But is there a critical mass, do you think, of where we hit that wall? And do you think it applies? The big question here is college football, because 12 to 16 will happen, in my opinion. I think it's a foregone conclusion. But does it go beyond that?
I don't think that we've hit it yet. Is where I would stand.
Do you think 16 is, though?
I would say 16, yes. 16, because unless I think that there is a reality where you could find a 24. I think that could be something you could convince me to push to. And not something that I would necessarily want, but you could convince me that wouldn't kill everything. The issue that I hear a lot is that, as we expand the playoff, it makes the regular season not matter. And college football is unique in a certain way, in the sense that it is the only sport really where one game can make and break your season. In the NFL, that's not the case. Obviously, in basketball, baseball, that's not the case. One game in college football in the regular season can make or break your season. Historically, that's been the case. Is you lose once, you're done. And so there is that sort of magnetism that comes with it, this idea of like, every game matters at the highest degree. Whether you're playing against Louisiana Tech or whether you're playing against Alabama, like a loss hurts you either way. And as you expand, suddenly, those losses to Louisiana Tech still matter, and the losses to Alabama still matter, but they matter more like this. And it starts to become this idea that okay, not every week matters in the same way that it used to. My pushback to that, though, is there's a lot of times, I was an LSU fan growing up, and LSU would be 6-0, 7-0, but it didn't feel like it mattered because Alabama was looming. And it's like, unless we beat Alabama,
it didn't matter.
None of this matters.
Right.
Whereas now, you go into that game, and if you lose, it's like, okay, that sucked, but there's still something to play for. And I think back to that LSU Ole Miss game last year, that in any other year would not have mattered for the playoff conversation, would not have mattered for a championship conversation. Yet here we are saying this is do or die for these teams. This game matters so much. Yeah. And I think that it has made so many more games matter. The top tier maybe doesn't matter as much, but those middle games are going to matter, whether that number is 16, 24, 12.
Right. So there's this duality here, right? Is that there is some devaluing happening. It's just natural. You go from 2 to 4 to 12. Like there's just no way around it. Now, the degrees of devaluing matter. So like Ohio State last year, you could argue, hey, have we devalued the games because we allowed them to lose 2 games and they still hosted a playoff game? I would argue on the other side of it that allows the best teams to peak, right? It allows them to have, and once again, the Michigan loss is like a total coaching atrocity. I mean, it's one of the worst coach football games. I think it's one of the worst coach football games of the last 25 years, like all across the sport. I mean, Ryan Day trying to make the point that, hey, Michigan's good at one thing, their interior defensive line, and we're just going to try to make a point and run at it. I watched Jeremiah Smith say, Oregon can't double team me. They try to triple him. He went for 204, but you try to knock the teeth in of Michigan for some ridiculous reason. Terrible. But like it still allowed them to peak. And that was a team that I thought at the beginning of the year was the best team. They ended up being the best team at the end of the year. They lost 2 games. We have not said that about a champion, I believe, since your LSU Tigers did it back in 2000 and whatever year it was. Right? Yes. So I think there is some duality to it, but I think we're at the point now where we've kind of already devalued the regular season, but not in a way where it feels insignificant. I think about that USC team that played Penn State in that brilliant Rose Bowl game. Like that USC team Sam Darnold's team was totally good enough to be in this era, a college football playoff team. I mean, that's the kind of team that you actually want in a CFP situation. So I think it's good, but I do wonder, like, where do you stop? Because I think 16 is too many. Like, there are not 16 teams worth playing for a championship. I mean, Ole Miss would have made it last year, and I'm sorry, man. Like, but you lost to Florida and you lost to Kentucky. And I can't stomach that and say, like, you don't deserve to play for a championship if that's the case. Alabama got walked by a 6-win Oklahoma team and lost to Vanderbilt. I mean, you can't tell me that, like, that team deserved to play for a championship. I thought if any team did, it should have been Miami and Cam Ward's team. Like, that's the team I would have fought for at the end. But still, you have to say, like, they couldn't play any defense last year at all. So it kind of does get to your argument of, like, okay, is it entertainment? Is it is it competition? Is it value in the regular season? I think if we do hit 16, though, I don't want to see these conference title games anymore. I really don't want to see them because last year, we had Penn State play Oregon and, Ohio State sat out and made it. Indiana sat out and made it. I mean, we had two teams that didn't play in the conference title game, and also the champion of college football didn't play in the conference title game either. So I'd like to see that go away.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it also, just from a calendar standpoint, you can't push things back much further. I think we kind of all sort of burnt out on college football, or at least speaking for myself.
Did you feel that way? I want to ask you, did you feel that way?
I was like, okay.
The weekend of the divisional round or the wild card round occurred.
Yeah.
I think was right before the championship game. And I was like, man, I watched ball all week and like this title game, I'm excited, but do I really care?
Well, and it's like part of it's just that Ohio State felt so inevitable by that point that it was like, okay, do I really want to watch this team that's clearly head and shoulders better, go out and walk Notre Dame? I think that played a part in it. I think it was just also like my biological rhythm said, okay, college football's done the second weekend of January. And the longer it went on, the more I was looking around like, oh, we're still doing this, and you had then all these conversations became about the portal and guys jumping in while they were on playoff teams. It's like, if there was a way to condense it, I think the first option with that is to eliminate these conference championship games. But I don't really know how you do, it's easy to say that in the SEC and the Big Ten.
It's money.
Arizona State and Iowa State played a game that mattered a lot and was a whole lot of fun to get into one of those playoff spots.
It's true. It's a totally fair point. I just think it's at some point, like, other diminishing returns in terms of like the way we're taxing these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, and once again, you and I have talked about this a lot, but we'll talk more NIL as we go along. But these guys still aren't paid for the actual labor. And like, you can't go 16, 17 game seasons here with these guys as college players. And I don't think the NFL would like that very much either. And they're like, oh, you're going to put more extra miles on our future stars.
I can tell you that the Titans were very glad that Cam Ward did not make the playoff.
Yes, totally. I totally agree. But I do think, like, my thought is like, for the NCAA tournament especially, there are diminishing returns. Mm-hmm. Man, you will see it sometime. But like, VCU makes the Final Four run. But basketball's random like that. VCU should not have been in the tournament. They didn't even meet as a team that year when it happened. Teams can get hot. That's the thing. You and I watched it last year. Arkansas just like, it was like, all right, you know what? Like, we've had enough time together. We've had enough games where we just kick it into gear in February. Number of times talked about Cal teams where it's like, these guys suck. In late January, it's like mid-February, they're like, they've won 6 in a row. Who's going to beat this team? Basketball is different, but I do think there is a bit of an idea of like, are there diminishing returns if we keep expanding how many teams are allowed to play for a championship?
Well, and that's the difference in basketball and football, in my opinion, is that we've already kind of peaked toward that critical mass in basketball to where it really devalues the regular season as a whole. Like, if we're suddenly saying that you don't even have to be 500 in your conference, you don't even have to be really close to 500 in your conference to make the tournament, that's a different conversation than which 2 or 3 loss football team are we letting get in. To me, like, there's a significant difference in those two conversations.
Totally.
And
I do think they're related, though.
Yes.
The idea of like, okay, like, where do we stop? Because they've been able to push through college football playoff reform pretty quickly. And so, to me, the fact that this tournament expansion has felt inevitable, but they're like, whoa, hold on. I thought it was, I was surprised by the news, Jack. Were you?
I was too. I figured it was coming down the tracks. I mean, the reality is it's a dollar and cents deal.
Yeah.
And if you can have more games, that's more games you can sell ads for. That's more money you can make that you can distribute to the conferences.
Right.
Like from a simple dollars and cents sense, it feels inevitable. And this is something that I'll argue until the cows come home is that teams should, or schools and the NCAA should sometimes work against their own interests.
For their long-term interest,
should work against the short-term interest for the long-term interest and health of the sport.
The sport, right.
And I think that this is the first time in a long time I felt like there was a move that felt that was understood.
So that bleeds into our next topic about the in-game experience at stadiums, because I think a part of this that we're talking about, hey, does the in-stadium experience suck at college football games? Yes, part of it is the at-home experience is so good. It's fantastic, right? We got 4K. The amount that these companies invest in broadcasting, it's an awesome production. I mean, I love watching Sunday Night Football just because I love watching Chris Collins. I'll tell you what, Al.
Here's the
guy. But it's like Sunday Night Football is amazing to watch them go through the highlights. It's awesome. It's great production value. But going to games, what they've done with the CFP and with games in the opening weeks, they have really put the dampen on these games because they're playing too many of them at neutral stadiums. It's like Virginia Tech plays South Carolina, and the big selling point of Virginia Tech football is Enter Sandman. So if they go and also South Carolina football, conversely, how about Sandstorm?
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the cool thing about it. It's they should not be playing in Atlanta at 2:30 on a Sunday. That, I love that stadium. It's a super cool stadium, but that's not why we do this stuff. The first week of the season also, LSU gets to host, Clemson hosts LSU. That's great. That's what we want, right? But where did LSU play last year? They played, I believe, in New Orleans, right? That's where they played. And then before that, they played in Orlando.
Yeah, they've been Orlando, New Orleans, Atlanta. LSU's never at home week one.
Right. They've been bouncing between those openers, and let's see. Also, I believe we have Alabama and then Florida State week one. Great. You're playing at Doak Walker. Good. That's that's where these games
atmospheres.
It's actually thank you for doing that. But I mean, Syracuse and Tennessee are playing earlier in the day at Mercedes-Benz. Why? Why are we doing that? And so I think the problem is that you see week one more of the stuff that makes college football special. But the issue is when we hit the end of the line, the end of the season, the first round games, the playoff, are in home stadiums. But then we're going to go to, let's just make it up, blah, and play them in neutral sites. Do you think that plays at all into this conversation about the diminishing experience in a stadium for a college football game?
I don't think that the neutral sites, well, yes, in the sense of
it does.
In the sense of playing those games in neutral sites,
right?
The atmosphere and the in-game experience is worse than those games being at home stadiums. My thing is coming into the year, and this is something that I always feel the need to remind people coming into a college football season, is that going to games is a battle in the sense of it's harder than ever to get tickets. It's harder than ever to park. It's harder than ever to get inside. And then once you're inside, those commercial breaks take so long.
Here comes the guy in the red.
That guy comes out. And so
350.
Here's my question, Josh, because it used to be that they didn't bring out the little board with the clock that said, here's how long you've got left in the break. Is it better or worse now knowing how much longer you have to wait?
Should we trick the fans is what you're asking. Should we trick the fans?
Well, back in the day, it's like this armchair. Oh, it feels like it's been going on a long time.
Right.
Now it's like, oh, I know it's been going on 3 minutes and 15 seconds and we're still not playing football. What are we doing? It feels like the TV product has gotten so good at the expense of the experience in the stadium. And the other problem is that as fans have gotten priced out for corporations, for businesses to buy up seats, the crazy fanatics are going with them.
Yeah.
I feel like in the last few years, we've seen even those, even going back to LSU, when I've gone back and covered Texas A&M games there, Arkansas games there, it's not the same experience as it was a decade ago. and a lot of it's to do with the money and people getting priced out of the seats they had forever.
Totally
A
agree.
lot of it has to do with anytime I get excited, I have to sit on my hands for 3.5 minutes as I wait for Aflac to get its money.
Right.
It's a frustrating result. And again, I don't know exactly know what the answer is. I was looking into it, and the SEC on ESPN has the longest breaks of the conference, but they have fewer of them.
Okay. So you're waiting longer.
So you're waiting longer when you're waiting, but you're not waiting.
You're waiting less often.
Whereas other conferences will do like 2.5-minute breaks, but they have to slide an extra one in.
Right.
Somewhere. I
think, going back to the Redzone thing, this is why people like Redzone as it jumps around, although they added ads to Redzone. That was ironic. I think a part of this conversation that you mentioned, like the expense, it is the expense. Like stuff is like it is very, very expensive. This is not a political point or conversation. Just like it's expensive to go to games. It's expensive to park. It's expensive to pay for food, and it's all of that stuff together. And football games are long. Like it's actually the one thing that basketball does really well. It's one thing soccer does really well. Soccer doesn't have to sell beer at games because guess what? Go to the pub before, you're there for 2 hours, and guess what? You're back at the pub in about 2.5 hours. Like that's one of those. That's part of the deal, And I think that for football specifically, the technology is so good, but I do think like the price is keeping people at home. And I think that's where you actually get a lot more of the complaints about fans not connecting with the players as much, because we hear about all these really personal experiences, especially where you and I grew up, like these really personal experiences where you watch player X in this crazy, amazing venue. And actually, to illustrate this even more, it's a basketball example, but to illustrate it, I remember I went to Missouri, Arkansas when I was in college. Mike Anderson was the coach at Arkansas, and then Missouri. That was the year that Michael Porter and Jonte Porter were there. And I remember thinking to myself, as somebody who'd been to a bunch of great venues for college basketball, Bud Walton then was my favorite. I went to Missouri, Arkansas this year. It's about 8 years later. And a lot of empty seats around the lower bowl area, what the corporate seats are. And one thing we have in Arkansas, I think that, and that's why I love covering sports here, is that I think it illustrates a lot of these divides. I think it's a great snapshot in time, is that if Arkansas had played Central Arkansas in basketball in Northwest Arkansas, there would have been about 9,000 people there probably. Here, there were 15,000 in Little Rock. And the thing is like, don't lose the Little Rock people. And this is nationwide I'm talking about here. Don't lose your diehards. And I think that's where we're starting to get here, is we're starting to lose the diehards. The numbers don't bear it out totally, but the amount of disenchantment that I hear from fans on a daily basis, especially as somebody who works on a morning radio show, it's 4 hours, that does a ton of engagement, is that people are still watching. They're lying to you if they're not, but they do not get the warm and fuzzies the way they used to. I would argue that my argument has always been, Jack, that you still watch, you're still going to check it out. You still have the warm and fuzzies. It's still okay, but we are walking a bit further away from the amazing warm and fuzzies that made people feel the way they did previously.
Well, and I like the word you use, disillusionment. This idea that college football always was a little broken, but now we've gotten a little bit more of a window into how, and it's a little more clear and in our face of how. Like it was always kind of like this, but that stuff was kind of hidden in the shadows or wasn't quite as clear. Whereas now a lot of fans, and part of it is, everybody thinks the best era of college football was when they were like 10 years old.
Right.
Between 10 and 15 years old. The best era of college football for me was 2007, 2008.
Right.
It objectively is. I mean, that was the college. But no, like a lot of people, part of it is also just you're an adult now. You're the one paying for the tickets. Now you're the one doing, it's always been kind of.
Now you're giving the Alumni Association. It's not your dad doing it.
Exactly. Like suddenly, whenever they raised the prices for your dad, you were like, well, we're going to pay for that. We're going to go. We're Razorback people. And now they raise the prices for you. And you're like, my budget.
Right. And this is the critical mass point we made before, is that, and I think a really big example of this is conference realignment. I mean, it's like how much of the like fake I mean, we gave up Oklahoma State Bedlam, which was one of my favorite rivalries. It was always that last week of the year, 8:30 on ABC, and it's like you've got no idea. You knew Oklahoma State was most likely going to lose. You just didn't know how they're going to invent a way, for Clint Shelf to throw a pick at the end of the game, like Justin Blackman to do whatever. I mean, but it was exciting. It was fun, and the fact that we've gotten rid of that game, which was a staple on Saturday night in the primetime slot, for the sake of, and Oklahoma's not even playing the schools that could be natural rivals on the last week of the year in the final week. Like we've punted, and that's where I think you and I are on the same. We're like, all right, folks, we got to watch it. Like we can only have so much Maryland, Oregon conference action. This is not natural.
Well, and we've lost so many touchdowns. That's one thing about college football that always felt like at its core, college football is regional and college football is a community event. And so much of it is like, I talked about earlier, this idea of like the biological rhythm of college sports. Yes. And this idea of like growing up, again, my touchdowns are LSU. It's like, I knew that it was November because Alabama was on the schedule, Ole Miss was on the schedule, Arkansas was on the schedule, and that's how
it was starting to turn because
that's how it ended.
OU and Texas were playing at the state fair.
Yes, this is when this happens. This is when we do this. This is when my my birthday's coming up. We played Auburn on the week of my birthday, so I went to so many LSU Auburn games because that was the one game that my parents would get me tickets for my birthday. And it's just like these touchstones of how this sport has always worked are going away.
Right.
And I think about like the Little Rock, Arkansas used to play Little Rock Arkansas used to play LSU in Little Rock on day after Thanksgiving every year.
Right.
And it was a big deal that people would come out to the golf course outside War Memorial Stadium, tailgate, go to this game, incredible atmosphere. Well, suddenly it didn't make financial sense for the Razorbacks to be playing an SEC game not at home.
Right.
And it completely, it makes sense for them in their own interest to move that game away. But what you did was you lost another cultural touchstone for people in your fan base. And the more that you lose that, the more connection that you lose with your fan base.
And I've made this point, we've had this discussion, but once you start losing certain things, it's tough to get them back for certain programs. So for Arkansas being a great example, this program hadn't been good since they dropped those games, and the thing is that why should Joe Schmo care in Little Rock care when their coach Sam Pittman is saying, let's bring the game, let's go to Fayetteville. And that is a part of, I've always told the story. I've mentioned it a lot, but I went to Missouri for 5 football seasons, never saw an Arkansas versus Mizzou game until actually I moved here to work. And, my thought about this is hey, Missouri, go play the game in Arrowhead. Because guess what? Us students, we weren't there in Columbia, on Friday at 2:30. And guess what? For Arkansas, go play the game in Little Rock. Because guess what? The students were from Dallas and everywhere like that. And actually, a lot of students might actually be in Little Rock too. So, but you hit on these, you make sure you appeal to your fans. And that's the problem that I have now is that we're really not doing enough of that. I remember a few years ago when I went to Virginia Tech playing West Virginia on a Thursday night and just seeing the sunset and hearing Enter Sandman and being with my buddy Cole, who's a lifelong Auburn fan. It just, it can still be special, but we have to remember why it is. And I think the LSU Auburn game it was appointment TV for me, Jack, because I always knew something strange was going to happen. Something just totally out of pocket was going to happen. And it was you had to watch. And I'm sure for you, you're this is the one you want to be at. Because you're not sure how, you're not sure who, you're not sure when, you're not sure what end of Les Miles is going to be on it.
Well, actually,
you had to see what he was going to do.
With Auburn and Death Valley, they didn't ever win. It was the bedlam effect of it's not if Auburn's going to lose, it's how they're
going to lose. Right.
But and then from there, the way that the point beyond that is then once you get people in, you have to get them engaged, and there's just, and I don't know exactly what it is. I think the commercial breaks have a lot to do with it, but I don't want to just blame the TV. There's something that's almost like a wall that's been created between fans and the experience happening on the field, and I don't know how to put my finger on what exactly it is, but it just doesn't quite feel as connected.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they should make the players more available. I think that would help too.
Yeah,
I think that would help for connection reasons, just because it's like, like people just want to know these kids. I mean, that's really what they want. They want to feel that connection that they, with these players, and especially now that, that they are coming from a lot of places, at different places, obviously. I think people want to feel that connection. But the thing is like, ultimately what gives you the connection is like the special moments, right? Like, I think Vanderbilt fans, it's hard to not argue that you're not locked in with Diego Pavia right now, right? Because like that guy's like, I want to be here forever. He's having to fight for eligibility forever. And I'm hope, I keep giving you all special moments like I did last year. And like that stuff I think will maintain, but also in the margins, we still need to continue making the games special. One more point before we get out of here, the actual football thing. So coaches poll comes out. Nobody's got any idea who's going to be the best team.
No,
because you see these teams towards the top, Texas being a good example. They're 103rd in returning production, Jack. I mean, this is a team that's not returning a lot. And I don't even think this is an Arch Manning thing. I just think this is like a Sark's got it rolling thing, which I'm happy for him that people give him that much respect. They should. But like, I don't think anybody knows this year about who maybe the best team will emerge, but I think we're going to get a bit more of an NFL-ish season this year. I think it's a bit more of a crapshoot.
Well, and inevitably there will be teams that emerge that suddenly you're like, oh, well, why did we not think they were, the obvious number one? But I think that one of the big things that makes this year so fun is that a lot of the top teams have quarterback questions.
Right.
And I think that's just so much, like even Arch, unproven. Even if you have these guys that are high level recruits, we just haven't seen it yet. And so that's what makes it exciting, is that there's just so many unknowns going in, especially at that position, that makes me say, okay, what you got? Week one, we'll learn a lot. But the coaches barely make the picks for the polls anyways, and I'm not jealous of the people that they assign to do that.
Yeah, the GAs do this stuff, and the GAs
SIDs
Here's what happens: the SIDs, the GAs do it, and what they do is they look up, and they open a tab and they go preseason top 25. Okay, Sports Illustrated. All right, what do you have, Ross Dellinger? And Ross doesn't do that anymore, but CBS has their list as well too. Like, you go to those places, you find it, you just do that, and I mean, it's like, but I think to your point, like, I think Penn State should be preseason number one, but nobody trusts James Franklin.
Yeah,
why should they be number one? Right?
Wait until I was talking about LSU waiting for Bama, Penn State wait until they play Ohio State or Michigan. Like,
right.
Yeah,
Drew Howard's like one of the worst picks I've ever seen last year to end the game, and it's like, dude, that's the number one. That's the quarterback of the number one team in the country next year. Like, oh my God, James Franklin's the coach of the number one team. So I think that should they get rid of the coaches poll? Like, besides it's just more work for them, and they don't use it anymore.
Yeah, kill it.
Like, just bump the AP poll up earlier. What's going to change functionally, between now and that? I mean, I don't think anything.
Yeah, well, that's like, if it was actually coaches filling out the polls and actually paying attention, that would be a cool perspective. But it's not, and I don't know why they still, other than for another publication to have something else to talk about.
Yeah. All right, Jack, where can the folks find you and your work and all of its spectacular variety?
You can follow me on Twitter at JackAllenTV. Tune in if you live in Arkansas, KATV on the weekends. We also have a podcast coming out, the Hog Central podcast. If you're an Arkansas person or interested at all in Razorbacks, my guy Steve Sullivan will be doing that alongside David Basil, and it's just good. It's good Arkansas content. So if you're interested, that's coming closer to the season. Yeah. So just to give you all the full rundown, I didn't want to do this in the start of the show because I wanted to get into all this stuff. But Jack is the weekend sports anchor at Channel 7 here in Little Rock, and he works with a gentleman named Steve Sullivan, who's been around for a long time, my arch nemesis. And I work on a morning radio show. I produce that with a gentleman named David Basil, who leads that show. Baz and Sully are simpatico. So I am to David Basil what Jack is to Steve Sullivan. And that is how Jack and I have connected. We've had a lot of these really fun conversations that we wanted to bring to you all. And once I knew that we were bringing back this podcast,
I knew I wanted Jack to be a part of it. So you all can expect stuff like this every single week. I'm going to start really putting the ball in Jack's court. Jack's going to get to pick a lot of the storylines that we talk about because you all get to hear. Well, you all get to hear
ready
me
to learn UL Monroe, buddy.
There you go. Exactly right. You all get to hear me on Monday and Friday, and so whatever Jack picks, like that's what we're going to do. And I think some of you all will be interested, some of you all might not be. I encourage you all to listen to it because in my experience, Jack and I will touch on really a lot of stuff that kind of gets at the heart of the way college sports is changing. Because as two guys who are in this industry, like we might not like some stuff, but guess what? Like we have to deal with it because we want to stay in the industry. We can't just hate the sport that we're covering like for the rest of our lives. So, I know it sounds incredibly practical, but like that's kind of the way it is. And so we, I think, are incredibly equipped. Well, we're both, late 20s that we were just in college. We watched the way the college sports have changed as we've begun, and we've been in predominantly college markets. And so, that's why, Jack, I'm so pumped to do this with you. And every Wednesday, like we're gonna touch a lot, man. Like we're gonna hit on a whole lot of things, which I'm super pumped about.
Me too, and that's it's a lot of fun, being able to go. I've worked in Waco for a little while, covered Baylor, grew up in Baton Rouge, interned in South Carolina. Between me and Josh, we've been around the country in a lot of different ways. And so to share those experiences with you guys and also, see how this whole thing evolves.
And it's day at a time. It's like you and I were surprised we saw that they didn't expand the tournament. So, we are at a day at a time type deal.
Exactly. And so we'll try to do whatever is relevant at the time or not relevant at the time.
We'll talk about like Tulane's on defense if we need to. We'll do that. Yeah.
Whatever's needed.
Yeah. All right, Jack, we'll talk to you next week, next Wednesday. Appreciate you, man. And we'll see you on the flip side on August 13th.